Hi everyone, it's Paul Tilley, and this is MR 2200 Retailing. And today we're talking Unit 4, Organizing the Retailing Company. In this particular unit, we're looking at three basic things. We're talking about the various organizational concepts in retailing, we're identifying and discussing the human resource issues related to those, and we're identifying and distinguishing between the retail organizational structures that are available out there. This is covered in Chapter 12 of the edition of the book. Retailers achieve their financial objectives by effectively managing 5 critical areas: people, their employees, human resources; the location, which is their retail locations; inventory, which is the stuff they sell; the store layout; and finally, the customer. The considered application of these assets is the basis for achieving and sustaining a strategic competitive advantage. Organizations that get those 5 things right will do well. Organizations that don't get those 5 things right will not do so well. So from a human resource point of view, labor costs account for a huge percentage of the overall cost of retailing. And effective management then of these resources is absolutely critical. That is the key element to success. And if we can get good output for the amount of cost per unit, we can achieve some sort of a cost advantage over our competitors. The experience that many customers have with retailers is determined by the activities of these employees. They are the face of the organization. So those people, if they're helpful at selecting merchandise, providing information, providing assistance, and stocking the displays and shelves in an appropriate manner, by doing that right, that will appeal to the consumer and again help provide a competitive advantage. So how do we measure labor productivity? Well, labor productivity really measures the output of store associates over a specific period of time. And tracking measures such as sales per labor hour or scans per minute will kind of help ensure that retailers are getting good value for their money. So in terms of human resources, it's important that human resources plan to help develop competitive strategy. And that's becoming more important, again, because labor is a very high cost relative to total costs. So more emphasis is being placed on productivity through better use of people, assets, and facilities. Employees should never be regarded as throwaway assets. And that's the other thing. Employers are getting harder to recruit. All dimensions of your resource plan, ranging from selection and placement to pay, performance appraisal, the structural setup, and allowing employees to feel they're a vital part of the organization, those are all important. And we have to apply a good degree of sensitivity to issues inherent in people, motivation, job enrichment, and all of the things that progressive companies need to be done. Human resource management in particular is important in retail because employees play that major role. Retailers still rely on people to perform the basic retail activities such as buying, displaying, providing services. That's hard to automate. The key activities in retailing in terms of human resources then relate to things like recruiting, selecting, training, supervising, evaluating, and compensating sales associates. They're all typically undertaken by competent store management. So let's look at more detail in terms of acquiring and managing store employees. This is really very much the recruiting process. And the recruiting process is so named because it has a series of steps. And if really we look at it, there are 6 major steps that we need to go through. First of all, we have to have a really good analysis done to figure out what do we need, what skills do we need, and how many people do we need. So retail recruitment is a process of recruiting staff in the retail industry. The term encompasses every aspect of the hiring process and implies a process geared towards building a cohesive, customer-oriented team. We also have to ensure that we work within the legal system. Canada's labor law is the body of law that really regulates the rights, restrictions, obligations of trade unions, workers, and employers in Canada. And Canadian employment law is a big body of law, and it regulates the rights, restrictions, obligations of non-union workers and unionized workers and employers in Canada. Canadian law is really multi-jurisdictional. This means that in different provinces, people will be covered under different laws. In addition, Federal employees are federally regulated employees, and these would include employees that are in the um, federal jurisdiction, such as banking, radio, television, inland and marine navigation, inland fishing, transportation that crosses boundaries. Those are covered by federal government regulations, whereas most other 95% of all employees are covered by provincial legislation. But again, depending on the province, you're going to have a different set of regulations. So it's very important that employers be familiar with the regulations in their jurisdiction. The very first step is really to determine the need. What do we need in terms of employees? And if we look at that, then we are going to establish our basic hiring goals. And during this stage, really, recruiters must determine certain things such as the number of hires that we need to make, the types of positions that we need to fill. And to do this, we really have to conduct an internal analysis. What do we need? That needs to be done first. This job analysis involves a series of steps in and of itself. We need to look at the jobs that need to be done in order to achieve the objectives of the organization. We got to think about the duties, the knowledge, the skills, the abilities, the personal characteristics required to succeed in that given position that was identified. We got to think about what are the things that we need to collect, what's a bit of information, and then we need to go about systematically collecting. We need to think about the primary reason an organization will form a job analysis. It's really to ensure that the selection procedures that we use will give us the best applicant for the job and the most potential for success in that job. A valid selection procedure should measure only knowledge, skills, abilities, and personal characteristics that the job analysis is identified as being required to do that job. That way we're not inadvertently cutting some people out of a decision. From there, we develop what's called a job description. So if we think about a typical job description, it has heading information, which should include the job title, the pay grade, range of pay, the reporting relationship, hours, the nature of the work. There should be a summary statement there to list the general responsibilities and descriptions of the key tasks and their purpose, the relationships with customers, co-workers, and others, and the results expected by the incumbent. The qualifications should be there, which specifies the education, experience, training, and technical skills that the person would need to have in order to do the job effectively. There's also special demands, such as any extraordinary conditions that would be applicable. We also have the job duties and responsibilities. Now, really, there's two key things here. We need to know what is it the person does 90-95% of the time, and how long does it take them to do that. So that's important to be able to put that in. The tasks that are listed need to be listed in order of importance. That is, the most critical task first, and second, and so on, right down through. The whole goal of this process is, first of all, to identify what we need, and then to counter that up against all the applicants we have. And we look for the applicants that best meet the needs. So this involves a screening process. And the screening process is really going out and saying, what are some of the things we can do to figure out who are the best candidates? Screening processes could include things like testing, could include things like interviews, but effectively what it does is it narrows down the potential pool to the one or two people that you'll be prepared to hire. That process is concluded with a selection decision where we actually hire a person to do the job. And that person is the best combination of skills, knowledge, and other attributes that allow that person to most likely succeed in the job. Once a person is hired, then we move into training and retention. Really what we need to be able to do then is to add any missing elements to the person's skill level by training them. And this is really an ongoing process through the employment relationship. We constantly will look for areas in which the person excels, but also areas in which the person could use some improvement. And that's what we focus our training on, is improving those concerning areas. If we do this activity correctly, training, and this investment into our employees, it'll help retain people, because good employees are hard to find, and our goal is to keep people in the position for as long as possible. Good motivation techniques help improve all kinds of things at work, including productivity and efficiency, engagement, how interested people are in moving forward through the organization, making the company more competitive, attracting new talent, and reducing the likelihood of people leaving. We could evaluate on things like how people are with handling customers, things like reading approaches, product knowledge, suggested additions to purchases, asking customers questions, these sorts of things. We could look at it from an operational point of view, how do they work towards improving the store appearance, and what do they do to manage loss prevention, these sorts of things. And compliance, which is, do they meet up to the codes of work? That could include any codes, including occupational health and safety codes. So that's the human resource element. Next, we'll take a look at locations and what are some of the issues with regards to locations. Well, location is important. It's really the place that the firm decides to do its operations. Location decisions can have a big impact on costs, and it can have a big impact on sales. So businesses need to decide the best location that will take into account a whole bunch of factors, including where are our customers relative to the location, where are our staff relative to the location, how easy are we to get customers and staff in that location. Support services include all the ancillary services that go with the business, such as lawyers, doctors, these sorts of things. Cost also plays a major role in this. How much does a premises cost? Is it cost-effective location? Do the demographics work for you? If you're selling baby wear and you have very few babies around you, that's an indication that demographics are not working for you. Does the style match the community? Is this community that we're in now ready for this type of business? And can you find workers in this industry? Because it's really a challenge for a lot of businesses now. So other issues include things like municipal zoning. And before selecting a site, make sure you're aware of those municipal regulations and make sure you follow them. So next we'll look at merchandise inventory. Merchandise inventory is made up of the things that the company is going to sell in that store. So inventory includes all business goods that are available for sale and the raw material used to produce those goods. So inventory is really a current asset, shows up on a balance sheet that's current, meaning it turns into cash very quickly. And it really represents one of the company's biggest and most important assets because it's the products that you sell. Why do we hold inventory? Well, we hold inventory to make sure our customers are happy ultimately. We got to be able to get stuff quickly to customers. We got to be able to do it in a timely manner. We got to be able to do it so that it can be cost effective for the consumer as well as the manufacturer, as well as the retailer. And we really need to find a good balance between having so much inventory that we have a lot of expense holding it and making sure the customer can get what they want when they want. What are some of the key issues regarding inventory and inventory costs? Well, we got to think about what is the actual cost of it. We got the invoice cost, which is the sticker on it, how much it costs to buy. There's discounts, which relate to any incentives. So, for example, maybe volume discounts, seasonal discounts, these sorts of things. We got to consider transportation costs that gets built into the cost of the inventory. Storage cost gets built into the cost of inventory. Import duties gets costed into the inventory, and insurance has to get costed into the inventory cost. In terms of sourcing products come from many sources. We can buy products from abroad, from manufacturers, from other suppliers. For manufacturers, contractors, and retailers, effective product sourcing is going to be key to success in business. So there's really no shortage of product suppliers that you can choose from, but finding the right supplier is often a challenge. Next, we look at store layout. There's a number of key store layouts, and we look at some of the basic types of layouts. So first, let's look at the basic concept of layouts. So interior layout and creative display are important factors in the success of a retail store. So we got to think about the customer's needs, shopping patterns, and all of the things related to it from a customer's perspective. The type of layout used really depends on how much space you have, the shopping experience, what you're trying to create, and the products you sell. So if we think about successful retail layout, it really starts with creating appropriate window displays. A key factor is determining if customers are going to enter a retail location. Consider the window display as the first point of contact with customers. So key creating effective window displays include things like layering, putting many layers of stuff on there, storytelling, telling a story within the display, simplicity and elegance through simplicity, boldness and innovations, standing out basically, and a variety. Do we have a variety of items in the display? In terms of basic sales floor layouts, generally the space at the front of the store to the right is the more productive space. Selling space should be really planned to be most productive. We have to really consider, if we have a certain amount of space, what's the best use for it. So space at the front is referred to as the threshold or the decompression zone. It's the first things that people see when they come through the doors. People are going to make quick judgments at this point on what the store is, the quality of the store, the layout, the prices. All these sorts of things are really going to be the first impressions that the buyer is going to look at. So it's important to get that right. Entrepreneurs want to ensure that displays in the areas are attractive and high quality so that it will be able to deliver products to the customers. Most successful retail layouts have customers walk a path through the store, creating a shopping points. So you come in, you move to the right, you work to the back, you come back around the back and up through. So if we think about different types of layouts, we have what's called a grid layout, which is what we typically look at in most stores. Grid layout is organized with customers' convenience at its foremost. The free flow is similar to the grid, but it's all over the place. Some types of retailers are purchasing in more relaxed atmosphere. So instead of a hard and fast grid, it puts it kind of arbitrarily and allows for someone to shop through. Again, it really depends on the type of product you're selling, which of these two will work better. We can do an assessment of the various types of layouts, what works and what doesn't work. And there's a bunch of factors, and here we have an example of doing a physical assessment on a store using a tool for calculating or determining what layouts work best. We also need to consider customer service. Customer service is all about making sure the customer receives what they're looking for here. So 70% of the buying experience is based on how the customer feels. So if we can make the customer feel good, that would be helpful. Some of the things that contribute to a holistic retail experience include things like personal retail store experience, integrating online with offline sales, and curating customers' journeys in the online environment in particular so that they have a positive experience. We also have to concern ourselves with shoplifting, and a lot of stores take a lot of time to put in cameras and various other techniques to ensure that products are not disappearing out of their store without being paid for. So we try to measure the value of shoplifting by looking at what is the amount of stuff that's walking out the door and dividing it by the total sales in the same period. So we get an idea of loss as a proportion of sales. So these are the key things in this particular unit. If you have any questions, please let me know.